All right, folks, we're back. Trying again. Had a little bit of a mishap on the first one. The show is muted. Hopefully everybody has hopefully everybody makes it back over. There were only a couple handfuls of people watching, but yeah. Every now and then you think you're good at technology. You're like, "Oh, I'm going to really flex today. We're going to watch some videos." And you just absolutely just fall on your face. Yeah, so we got a lot to talk about. Well, luckily it wasn't that far in. Hopefully you can hear me. Tell me if it changes, I guess. What happened was I was watching the thing, and I was watching the video, and I don't know if hold on, folks. Yeah, I don't know exactly what happened, but I ended up muted at some point. So there we go. Bob Springer says woohoo. Mike Hansen says sounds good. You don't look good though. Wow, Mike Hansen, you look quite a bit like me to be talking about my looks. Anyway, so we have a lot to talk about. The Seahawks, the Huskies, a WNBA shoe deal. I wonder if it was muted the whole time or if yeah, you guys should tell me. Was it muted the whole time or did it go out after, Bob Springer says, I agree with Mike. Can you blur yourself? Oh, man. Nice to have an active chat. I've always said, what a time to have an active chat. By the way, if you enjoy the podcast in any way, please go to Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to it, and rate and review it, and leave a voicemail or a text message at 5303-SPORTS. Also, 530-377-6787 to, yeah, and we'll compile some voicemails and some text messages and answer them, play them on a future episode. Anyway, yeah, so it's a Thursday episode. Okay, Bob Springer says he couldn't hear any of it before. That's what I suspected. I didn't think I muted it at any point during the podcast, but I guess it makes sense that it was muted from the beginning. All right, so I was literally, what made that confusing too is into my muted mic, I was saying, I wonder if I have the sound on for the clip, and I did apparently, but that was the only place that there was any sound. So we are gonna watch the LeBron James and Bronny James sharing the court as the first father-son combo to grace an NBA floor together, as players at least. And also, so in attendance were the Griffies, Ken Griffey Jr., Ken Griffey Sr., and what I still have yet to, I have to imagine they were the first father-son to play together. I could be wrong, though. I know they were at least the first and only to this point to hit back-to-back home runs. When I was a kid, I had a baseball card that said the Griffies to commemorate that moment. I remember, I think I spent like $5 early 90s dollars on that baseball card. Now it's probably worth like 25 cents, but exciting moment. And we'll talk about the criticism of it in a moment, but let's first take a watch of Bronny and LeBron playing together. So
the first
they check in with 4 minutes left in the second quarter, and
to play together.
We'll skip forward a little bit.
On hand, Savannah, Zuri, and Bryce sitting front row.
So LeBron hard brick on the three, and what we see right
Just
away.
Amazing when you think about it. Take a step back.
What you're going to see right here is Bronny James showing exactly why he will never be an NBA regular. And it's not because, he's 6'1" and he's not going to be anything but a fringe marginal point guard at best on the offensive end. But he gets absolutely dominated here on the defensive end. And you're going to see exactly what's going to stop him from, even if his offensive game develops, it's just you cannot have this defensive game and play in the NBA.
So impressive. Incredible story. Randall got it.
He's just a boy among men there. And I know he's like, there's a position mismatch. Nobody's going to have him guard Julius Randle on purpose. Like this was a switch that went wrong or a switch that went to the wrong guy. A switch that put Randle, how tall is Julius Randle? He's got to be 6'9", something like that. He's got to be, and I said, so when you saw, yeah, so Randall is 6'9", LeBron is 6'9", and when you saw Bronny and LeBron checking in together, you got to see like the entire evolution of the NBA, just one enormous dude that's a size mismatch for everybody, and another guy who is taller than I am, but as an NBA player, he is undersized to the point that he's like unplayable basically in the modern NBA. And I'll be curious to see. I think basketball will evolve to a point where we're going to see, low 6-footers be useful again. But right now, he's going to just get absolutely ragdolled every game. And I didn't actually get to catch the plays themselves because I didn't watch the game. But what I am curious about is, so we get to the end of this video and we are, a minute and a half into the Bronny era, and he has not taken any shots in that point. And then apparently in the minute and a half that followed, he took 2 shots in a minute and a half. I don't have those shots on here. I'm also a little disappointed in this video, by the way, that there's no, give me some Griffey shots. Can we get the Griffeys courtside, please? Can we please see the Griffeys watching this during the game? I'm sure there were shots of them during the game at a variety of points. Also, I do think 3 minutes for Bronny shows that the Lakers are not. The Lakers also don't view Bronny as a future NBA player. All that being said, all the making fun of Bronny for not being an NBA player, this is a cool moment. And of course it's nepotism. Yeah, it's nepotism. That doesn't make it not cool. It doesn't make LeBron as a dad any... And also, by the way, there's been other nepotism in the NBA. How many Antetokounmpos have played in the NBA? I think it's 3, by the way. It might be more. Is that right? I got 3 on Basketball Reference, but let's see. Maybe I missed one. There was a longer list, and I could be... No, what? Alex Antetokounmpo did not play in the NBA, but he did... No, he did spend some... he was on a 10-day contract in 2023 with the Bucks. So I don't think he's ever made it into game action, but the point is these Antetokounmpos are getting special treatment also. Nobody seems to be mad about that. I mean, there's been some conversation about it, but Giannis Antetokounmpo is obviously not like the face of the NBA like LeBron is, but I think it's a cool moment either way. And I think that I also think like it's pretty awesome that Bronny is, what are we like? How long ago did his cardiac arrest happen? Like 1.5 years ago? And he's still healthy enough, regardless of what you think of his talent, to pass an NBA physical and suit up in the NBA. So, I'm sure we're going to see more of this story, but it seems to me like we're probably not going to get a lot of Bronny minutes to talk about, which is fine. Here we go. Bob Springer says, it's pretty cool. Still think it would have been cool if some other team would have drafted Bronny. I mean, the problem with that is he's not a good enough player to be in the NBA. You know what I mean? And so the only thing they'd be doing is trolling. And then obviously, like, LeBron is so in charge of the NBA that he was able to, through his agent, which is Rich Paul, right? Through his agent, just like basically extort other teams if they made the trolling move to draft Bronny. I also think, like, I mean, Bronny's career is over when LeBron's career is over, is the other thing that I think we can get out of this. And if that's the case, you got to, how much longer does LeBron have left? He got to that kind of like final milestone. Does he, how many championships does he have? 4? Because the only other thing that I would think, yeah, so he's got 2012, 2013, 2016, and 2020. The only thing I could see potentially keeping him around past like 2026 is if the Lakers win this year, because LeBron he'll be 40 this year. He's turning 40 in a couple months. And if the Lakers win this year and he's sitting on 5 and he has a chance to tie Jordan at 6, I wonder if that's enough to keep him around. I don't know if I think that's good, but it's also like, it's hard for me to imagine an NBA that does not include LeBron James because his career has literally spanned almost the entire time that I didn't watch the NBA. It's overlapped completely with the time that I did not watch the NBA. He comes into the league 2 years before the Sonics get stolen from Seattle, and yeah, I don't know. And if the Lakers struggle this year, do we see? I just don't think we get LeBron. I think we get him through 2025, the 25-26 season, because I think he's going to want to do the like Jeter farewell tour. That's my guess. I could be wrong. Pure speculation. I don't know LeBron James. I don't know if that's a shock to you that I don't know LeBron James, but I don't know LeBron James. Yeah. Cool story. I'm not mad about the nepotism. I obviously, like, the nepotism coming from that direction makes it different from the Griffey situation. Griffey was the better of the two Griffies, and bringing his dad in this dude was still like a contributing major leaguer. So, and it's been really cool, by the way. I've heard Griffey do a bunch of interviews. He did a podcast with Dave Sims. He's done like the Pivot podcast I've talked about in the past. Go listen to him talk about that period of time, because he's still got, like, the kid is still in there to a degree. I think that if you listen to Griffey now in his 50s, it's pretty obvious that he is becoming like a grumpy old baseball man, and that's fine. I'm okay with that, even though I disagree with like the old school baseball mentality on a lot of things, but he's got a lot of fun stories. He also talked about on the Dave Sims podcast about how he could have been a pitcher, basically. Like, and that makes sense to me. He had a great arm out of center field and a lefty in his time, but he said it in his time, they would not let someone play both ways, which he's probably right. I mean, he's not even probably right. They still don't really want Ohtani playing both ways. He's still DHing and not playing the outfield. And Griffey was a great defensive outfielder. So we'll stick to basketball for one more minute. Angel Reese got an extension on her deal with Reebok, and she's going to have a signature shoe coming out in 2026, which seems weird to me. It seems weird that it would take that long. I don't know the extent of her injury. I know her 2024 season got cut short by injury. To me, this is all good news. To me, this is like, if you're looking at the WM, maybe I guess the other reason is I think there's some speculation that the WNBA is headed for maybe the most significant labor stoppage since they've existed. I don't know if there's been a labor stoppage, but I think you're going to see like a pretty big boost in salaries in the WNBA, and there's probably going to be a lot of I don't think there's been an interesting WNBA offseason until last year when it was leading up to Caitlin Clark getting drafted. But I think this offseason there's going to be interest because they're going to, these teams are going to, there's going to be some uncomfortable truths that get spoken, I think, about the revenue and the profitability of the WNBA. But also I think like it's in the best position leverage wise that it's ever been to ask for more money and something closer to equal pay. But the fact that I'm a fan, it's weird that you have to like pick both. I think that the Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark rivalry is going to be one of the more exciting and more fun and entertaining rivalries. And I think the NBA the WNBA is doing a very bad job, and its players and its executives doing a very bad job of like leaning into the skid. Hold on, I got a audio message from my sister. Give me a moment to just text her back. Okay, this is not something serious. You get a weird message from a family member, and you're like, oh God, what tragedy has befallen our family to get this message. I just had that go through my mind. Yeah, I'm excited. Like, give Angel Reese a shoe deal, a movie deal, give these ladies more money. I mean, I don't think they're ever going to get paid what the NBA players pay or are paid until they're as popular as the NBA. I think that's actually we could talk about that later if there's labor strife in the WNBA. I'm happy to talk about it in real terms later on, but I know that nobody gives a shit about the WNBA. I like Angel Reese. I think I'm going to share this. She's so. I also think, by the way, like the rebound situation, it is the memes are very funny. The memes of her watching of her. How I would love to see a stat. I tried briefly. I didn't put a lot of effort into it because I don't care enough. But I wanted to see like what percentage of her rebounds are her own shots that she's missed. And how does that compare to the rest of the league? And if you subtract those, how does her rebound record look? I'm curious as a sports fan. But the problem is if you go down that road, everyone thinks you're trying to invalidate the WNBA as an institution. And I've never been more interested in the WNBA than I've been right now. And I think that the WNBA needs to lean into that. They need to stop trying to hide from the not the literal, not the, it's an ugly pun, but the fever that Caitlin Clark has created and the rivalry and the anger towards her, and start playing that up. Play these things up as rivalries instead of this like idea that these women in the WNBA need to behave any differently than their male counterparts. And then lastly on national stuff, Tua's coming back. It'll be kind of interesting to see what, I know like the reaction is going to be pretty mixed because everybody has decided that they think Tua should. I have one other national story actually. They think Tua should retire. Like they think they should be able to tell a dude when he gets to stop working, when he has to stop working. A dude that's got a semi-guaranteed contract in a sport where people get injured, and I'm happy he's coming back, and I hope he stays healthy. But like, I think it's a slippery slope. Like I've said many times on this podcast. It's a slippery slope when we start telling players they can't play because they've been injured, especially, by the way, when independent neurologists, because the NBA has really strong rules against letting these players come out still injured. Does he very likely have a higher probability of re-injuring his brain? Absolutely. Here's a question. If you were offered $90 million to receive a brain injury, I think most of us, especially most of us that come from like modest beginnings, which I am one of, and remain. I come from modest present. You offer me $90 million and you let me roll the dice on a concussion, I'm probably taking that concussion, to be honest with you. Now, the number one thing I care about when it comes to my children's health, the number one thing is brain health, is having them not hit this is like the time when other people are playing with them and they're flinging them up in the air and they have them on their shoulders and shit. The thing that makes my asshole pucker more than anything is the idea of them hitting their head. My kids will be wearing, I have two daughters, they're not going to play football, but they're going to wear bike helmets everywhere. They wear helmets when they ride. My daughter has a scooter. She's gonna wear a helmet when she rides the scooter. We're a helmet family. We're a no brain injury family. But that being said, if their dad could make $90 million receiving a concussion, I'm doing it. And I don't think we should be stopping Tua from doing it just because it makes you feel bad to watch him play. If he's going through all of the steps that are required by the NFL and he gets to make that decision as an adult in America. The last one is Lamar Jackson is talking about Derrick Henry being able to break the all-time rushing record for a single season, which is held by Eric Dickerson. Has been since 1984, by the way. I was going through the people who've rushed for 2,000 yards. O.J. Simpson was the first in 1973, I believe. And I think that's back in a 12-game season. And then I want to say Dickerson did it in a 14-game season, but I could be wrong. Wait, let's actually see. Because there's been, I think it's like 8 guys that have ever done it. hold on. We can take a peek at this real quick. Okay, so all-time single-season rushers. So Eric Dickerson does it in 1984, playing for the then LA, eventually the St. Louis Rams. He does it in 16 games. So is OJ the only guy to do it in less than 16 games? Because Dickerson is the second. No, Earl Campbell did it in 1980. Let's see how many games Earl Campbell played in 1980. Did he play 14? No. Well, he played 15. Oh, shit. He didn't actually do it. Did I just click on a link that he didn't actually get there? So he didn't even rush for 2,000. That was in 15 games, I will say. And obviously Derrick Henry did it in 2020, and he would be the only guy to do it twice, which would be quite an achievement. He'd be the third Baltimore Raven to do it, which would be wild. How does this sit with you? I guess, like, do you care about the capital R running game in the NFL? I know there's going to be old school people out there that, like, they want the game to look like the way they grew up. The same type of people who, you know, they're like, they want the old hits. They don't care about concussions. They think that concussions and all the talk about concussions is for the weak. Like, there's going to be people like that just want the game to look the way it used to look. They want the game to be 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and we all, I don't know. We all go to our white church on Sunday, like, before the games in the East Coast time zone, probably. It's never going to get back there. The game's more marketable than it's ever been. Every time you hear someone say, like, oh, the NFL has a problem, the NFL needs to fix this problem, the NFL is the most popular of the three major sports in America. Like, the NFL's doing great. The NFL doesn't need to fix anything in particular. They certainly don't need to make I also, like, there's two things that have happened. Teams are running the ball less, and they're running by committee more. They're paying running backs less. They're not expecting guys to carry the ball 300 times in a season routinely. And do you want to see that come back? I mean, like, for fantasy football, it was a great time when it was like, there were, like, what's the most 1,000-yard rushers there have ever been? So this is Bob Springer says, I do miss some of the hits, but I get it. Player safety is number one. I agree with you. 0 running backs will be a thing soon. Yeah, this is the thing I talked about on a somewhat early episode of this podcast, by the way, is I think we're going to see the running back position go extinct and be replaced with Deebo Samuel types, with, what's the dude, Xavier Worthy types. Guys, or DJ Moore gets a couple carries, Cordero Patterson. Guys like this, they're like hybrids, true hybrids between receivers and running backs. There will be some guys that survive it. Like a Marshall Faulk type would survive it. Ricky Waters. By the way, go back and realize how, if you're a Seahawks fan, go back and realize how underappreciated Ricky Waters was in Seattle. That dude was incredible in Seattle. There will be guys that survive it, but for the most part, I think we're going to start to see the league shift to not only not paying running backs, like, we're there. The last offseason was a move back in that direction. I think that we will see how the Eagles feel at the end of the Saquon Barkley deal. To me, that seemed like a massive overpay by a coach and a front office that might be on its way out. Yeah, that's a good point. Bob Springer says Golden Tate would have been this too. Totally agree. Golden Tate would have been great for that role. A lot of times you'll see, by the way, these guys that are like multi-sport athletes, and Golden Tate, up until even just like a couple years ago, was still like playing baseball. He played in like on a Port Angeles semi-pro team like somewhat recently. Yeah, we're gonna see some interesting use some interesting ways to reimagine the running game, I think. We're seeing it with, I mean, and by the way, you know who might lead that is the Seahawks with Ryan Grubb, one of the most innovative coaches in the NFL. Do I want to see Derrick Henry run for 2,000 yards? I think it'd be cool. I think he's probably probably the last. Let's take a look at where he's at career-wise, because he obviously has some injury-shortened seasons, but I mean, is it 10,003? What did Emmitt Smith run? Was he at 18,000 or something like that? Emmitt Smith rushing yards. Yeah, 18,355. It's not going to happen. That's the reality. It's not going to happen. Emmitt Smith played till he was quite a bit older. The NFL, the modern NFL, especially without massive financial commitments to Derrick Henry, there's going to be no pressure to have that guy on your roster running meaningful downs in his late 30s. How late did Frank Gore play? That's like Frank Gore played like 2 recently. Like, Frank Gore played his last games. He was, 37 in 2020. How late did Adrian Peterson play? But Adrian Peterson, I haven't listened to it yet, but he was a guest on the Get Got podcast. Peterson played, I think, 15 years. 15 years till age 36. Career ends with 11 non-productive carries in Seattle. It's funny how many of these guys on that Get Got podcast like barely crossed over with Michael Robinson and Marshawn Lynch, but made enough of an impact on them to still come back and have a conversation. All right. I want to talk about these trades. Let's talk about these trades. The Seahawks traded, or this trade, I should say. Seahawks traded Jerome Baker and a 4th-round pick for Ernest Jones IV, a Tennessee Titans linebacker who I think it's been like pretty celebrated typically, or like, on the whole by this fan base, by analysts I've seen. I've also seen people who are like, I feel like this is true in baseball also. There's like a segment of people who, if something isn't okay, I'm gonna relate this to my fantasy football league, and I'm gonna apologize in advance because I know the last thing anyone cares about is someone else's fantasy football league. But I play in a league, a dynasty league, and the nice thing about dynasty leagues is it allows you to make trades with teams who are at the bottom of the division because they don't stop paying attention as easily, because now they have something new to work on. They need to work on next year's roster. So there's like, in a dynasty league, you can have teams that are buying and selling because you have teams that are good and are bad. And there's like benefit in trading away like aging veterans or whatever. At the risk of the person I'm going to talk about seeing this and stopping negotiations with me, I was trying to trade for George Kittle, and they said, well, I would need someone that's a sure thing in return, like Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those two were, and then there were a couple other guys listed, and that's like, you're never going to make that trade. Like, that trade's just never going to happen because those two guys are not only better than George Kittle, they are also younger than George Kittle. The reason George Kittle is even a trade target, if George Kittle was 23, he'd be really difficult to trade for. But if you're a dynasty league guy at the bottom of your league, you're probably thinking about trading a guy that's 31 years old, right? Like, there's not that many players, especially not Kittle's a tight end, so does he play on the outside? Does he play on the inside? Whatever. But like at pass catching positions, there's not that many guys playing into their mid-30s. So I think that people, they have a hard time understanding the difference between untouchable, like the space in between untouchable, like something that has immense value and something that has zero value. So if it doesn't have immense value, it has to have zero value. Are draft picks worth nothing, or are they worth everything? Well, the answer is neither. The Seahawks traded a 4th-round pick for Ernest Jones, who was traded for a later round pick swap to the Titans from the Rams. And the only criticism I've heard is the giving up of that pick. The fact that the Rams gave a better deal to the Titans than the Titans gave to the Seahawks. And there's a couple things about that I think are like worth just, I think, debunking. Would it be debunking? The Rams probably did not want to trade a guy to the Seahawks, an interdivision or intra-division trade. I doubt they wanted to make that trade to the Seahawks. Also, Jones has played an additional, whatever it is, 7 games. His value is different than it was that long ago. Like, I have PFF numbers up. We can actually look at him real quick. Let's share this. So, according to PFF, through 7 games this year, they have Jones rated at a 62.5, which is right in the same range as they have Jerome Baker. These types of things, like these, like a non-pass rushing linebacker in the modern NFL that's being asked to do a lot. It's probably one of the tougher things for them to grade, I would imagine. Is this like super encouraging that the Seahawks just traded for a guy whose PFF grade is similar to Jerome Baker, and they traded Jerome Baker and a pick that's a meaningful pick, by the way? Like you could set your, if you want to know what picks are valuable, basically like rounds 1 through 4 are valuable and rounds 5 through 7 are throw-ins to even out a deal that like someone needs their ego stroked. The average talent coming out of those rounds is lower. So is that super encouraging? No. By the way, like I've talked about in the past, I don't think anything is the Bible. I'm an atheist in real life and about football, but I think that like PFF's doing the best of anybody. And so the other part of this is, so yes, his value is more. Also, Jerome Baker, they're going to save a couple $1 million on the cap, and that's not nothing. Like, that's a pretty common thing, is for a team to acquire cap space is valuable, and you pay for it. So we saw it last year with Leonard Williams. I suspect that cap space was built into this also. Do we think Ernest Jones is going to come in and turn into Ray Lewis or turn into Roquan Smith? Probably not. But the Seahawks are very high on him, and if we were going to trust Mike McDonald with anything, it would be to identify quality linebackers. And does it seem steep? I don't know. I think Ernest Jones is he on the last? I think he's on the last year of his deal. I don't know if he has a restricted free agent situation after this year, because he was a 3rd-round pick. Did he get tendered, or is that Ernest Jones tender? Or does that happens after this season? Anyway, so one of the reasons that are being stated as the reason that the Rams would trade him, according to Google's AI, is that the Rams were unable to reach a contract extension, but they traded him for basically a pick swap, like a 5th-round pick for a 6th-round pick in 2026. It's not the least valuable thing you could trade for, but it's not a lot of value. Supposedly Jones wants to be paid. That must mean that people in the NFL think he's better than, some of the Twitter pundits think that he is. I'm going to tell you, like, of all the things in the world for me to understand, like, productive and scheme adhering linebacker play is probably the hardest thing for me to understand. Like I feel like once you learn what Mike and Will mean, you have to, like, nobody will ever explain those in terms. You just have to use Mike and Will now. You can never use different terminology for those guys. Everything I've read seems to suggest that this is going to put Terrell Dodson in a position that requires him to do less. He's a guy that I think was an interesting low risk, high reward guy, maybe medium risk. He got like a real salary. Felt the same way about Jerome Baker. And we also talked about, by the way, on this podcast that probably one of those guys was not going to be back in 2024 or in 2025. I did not think that Jerome Baker would get traded that early, but yeah, I'm cautiously pretty excited about this trade. Also, like, if the Seahawks think he's that good, the chances of them extending him during the season are also very exciting. There's also a bunch of stuff out there about the draft classes period not having a lot of linebacker talent. That's something that I view as like an impermanent state, because eventually you're going to just have to start scheming in a way that the guys that are available can succeed in, right? Like, you're never, this is why I don't like the idea of changing rules to change results, because these teams will evolve and the smarter teams will evolve more quickly, and this will lead to parity. And so will Ernest Jones be great? Will he get a big extension? I hope he gets a moderate extension as a Seahawks fan, but like, maybe. But are you going to, so there's two other things that bug me, by the way. When people say the Seahawks are going to get compensatory picks for oh my God, why am I blanking on his name? Lewis. Damian Lewis. They're going to get compensatory picks for Damian Lewis. So it's like they didn't lose a pick. No, they lost a pick. A fourth round pick is not less valuable because you already have a fourth round pick. There's a bunch of like really stupid linear thinking that people do. And yeah, it's still value. It's still like capital that your team had. Draft capital has become a big thing, but it's like, it's still an asset that you gave up for this. If you have a bunch of $5 bills in your pocket, just because you have a 5 already doesn't mean giving away a 5 doesn't mean you lost 5. That's a pretty damn good analogy, I think. So, yeah, I mean, and it sounds like Jones is probably going to suit up, play significant snaps this weekend. Probably get spelled by Tyrese Knight a little bit for because yeah, he'll get spelled a little bit by Tyrese Knight because, I mean, one, because I think they want a rotation and they want depth and they want to develop Knight, but also, and maybe because maybe some of that time will go, or some of the snaps will come from Dodson also, but also because like he's familiar with the scheme already is how I understand it, folks. I'm not a football expert, I guess, but I would tell you like that seems to be the prevailing thought, is that Ernest Jones will step in right away and be able to make an impact this Sunday. Okay. The Seahawks also put Stone Forsythe on IR. Abraham Lucas and George Fant were practicing. We got to see Mike Jarrell last week be seemingly more effective than Stone Forsythe. Of course, he played against a different team. These things they don't occur in a vacuum, but my suspicion is that putting Stone Forsythe on IR is in lieu of cutting Stone Forsythe. I have no doubt that he's got an injury of some kind, but every NBA or every NFL player has an injury of some kind come week 7, probably. The Seahawks also signed Josh Ross, a linebacker from Baltimore, who, by the way, played for Mike McDonald in Baltimore and at Michigan. So seemingly very exciting. I'll throw a little bit of cold water on that. Josh Ross has never played a defensive snap in the NFL. He's played some special team snaps, but even not a ton of special team snaps. He's got 7 career tackles. Pretty small total snap count, and they're exclusively on special teams. So is Josh Ross going to come to Seattle and become a depth piece, a guy that plays significant snaps? The only person that knows that, or the only person who could even possibly think that, like with the data we have, is Mike McDonald, is John Schneider, is people who have like an inside track. I don't think that's a significant move. Anyway, okay, and then the Huskies are going to Indiana. I guess two things about this: the Seahawks are underdogs at home, which is so typically the like adjustment for home field advantage is 3 points ish, and I believe the Seahawks are 3.5 point underdogs at home, which means that essentially odds makers and bettors have the Seahawks as a touchdown worse team than the Buffalo Bills. And the Huskies are going to Indiana, and they're about at their 6.5 point underdog there. So again, I think this is like a little bit of, it's got to be difficult for Vegas odds makers and bettors to adjust to the Big Ten, because the Huskies, like, this is a team that still has high level talent that can still go out and beat Michigan on a Saturday, that can give the juggernaut Washington State Cougars a run on a Saturday, that can go out and just get absolutely dominated by Iowa on a Saturday. This is still a team with a lot of talent, and I think that's like, if you go by that same idea, and I don't know that the home field advantage in college is the same, but let's say it's 3 points. Home field advantage is 3 points. This is basically suggesting that the Seahawks are 3.5 points worse than an Indiana team that is undefeated and 13th ranked in the country. So I guess that's to say, I think that Vegas odds makers think the Huskies are all right. Like, not an incredible team, but I think that says that they think they're a quality team. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading this a little too Pollyanna, but it seems to me that that's what Vegas odds makers are suggesting. This isn't a game with like a double-digit spread, a 2-touchdown spread. This is a home game for Indiana, and part of it probably also is affected by the fact that Indiana is not a perennial power, but home game for Indiana, and Washington is only a 3.5 point adjusted underdog. So I don't know. I don't know enough about Indiana. I will tell you, we have an episode coming out on Saturday with my friend Gaby Lucas, who's a comedian. She used to write for UW Dog Pound, Huskies fan since she was a little child. We talked about that. We also, by the way, we talked about her recent trip to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, where she spent like almost a month running an hour one-person show. And that shit's in the beginning of it. Fast forward if you don't like it, okay? I left it in. I found it interesting, and it's a medium you can fucking move along. You can fast forward it to the part where we start. I don't know, is it 15 minutes in? You go do that. So anyway, yeah, I'm like optimistic that the Huskies have a chance in this game. It's another early start. Very exciting. Very exciting to have to talk about this on a regular basis. Very exciting to start collecting data on the Huskies record at a time where I've already been up for 2 hours. And I think these goddamn kids need to just grow up, be able to wake up and be productive at 9 a.m. I'm sure it's very difficult, especially at that age. And also I'm very sleep deprived. So I'm here to bitch more than anything. Make sure you leave us a voicemail, by the way. It's I gotta wait for it to come up with is it 5303 sports? 5303 sports. Why do we not have an area code number that's in the Seattle-Tacoma area that's in Washington State? Because it's Google Voice, and this is what was available with sports. I wanted it to be memorable. So 5303 sports. We'll put together enough of them that we can devote a little time to listening to funny voicemails or shitting on unfunny voicemails. That's another option. And literally anything you want. If you want life advice, if you want to ask us a question about sports, if you want to criticize the show, if you want to tell me that I should be blurred out on screen, all these things are available to you. Come see me on Friday. I'm opening for Andrew Rivers at Ricardo's in Lacey. That'll be fun. I've been to that venue a bunch of times. And on, what is it, on, just go to CaseyMcLeanComedy.com. My calendar is actually pretty updated. I did that about a week ago. I updated my calendar. Go check me out. We got Bickerson's on November 23rd. That's another big one. Thank you all for listening. Casey McLean Comedy on YouTube. Watch my special, Do Not Shake. I love you so much. Bye. Oh, and then we got a new song. Did you notice it? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Tell me. All right.